So I really want to invite you to think about when was the last time that you felt a sense of wonder, or let yourself wonder as you connected or related to a being. I wanted to talk a bit about wonder today. Wonder being both a noun and a verb, right? We can feel a sense of wonder, amazement or awe, openness, and we can practice wondering, orienting to beings and ourselves with that sense of openness. And it really kind of invites us into direct experience, right? Making contact, connecting in the moment and receiving. Wondering feels like an embodied interest. So think about times when you fell in love maybe with a new baby or a new pet or a flower in your garden or maybe a new partner, right? There is often that kind of total openness, not thinking we know who this being is, but being very willing to connect and learn more. And so as we're focusing this month on the parami of wisdom, insight, I was thinking about how wonder in this way is both sort of a stance and an orientation that can lead us to wisdom, and also sort of the fruit of wisdom, right? Because the more wise we become, the more we're going to feel a sense of wonder and be willing to wonder. And I think we have all felt how vulnerable and heart-oriented this process is, right? Because it really means we're totally open. Valerie Kaur says, deep listening is an act of surrender. We risk being changed by what we hear. And I think that feels to me like the essence of this, right? Where we're willing to listen, we're willing to be changed. And there's that bravery and courage. Right? We often think of wonder as just a childlike state. And I think there is that energy to it. But there's also this sort of courageous warrior heart that isn't caught in ego, isn't stuck in assumptions or thinking we know, but more that willingness to say, I don't know about you. So Valerie Kaur, she talks about wonder a lot in her book called See No Stranger. And it's a memoir and a manifesto. She talks about her own process of becoming a lawyer and a social justice advocate. And she writes especially about some of her experiences, particularly after 9/11, being a member of the Sikh community and having many people in her community being targeted and even murdered. And there's a phrase that she uses throughout the book, sort of anchoring her whole framework, which is, you are a part of me I do not yet know. You are a part of me I do not yet know. She writes, see no stranger begins in wonder. It is to look upon the face of anyone and choose to say, you are a part of me I do not yet know. Wonder is the wellspring of love. Who we wonder about determines whose stories we hear and whose joy and pain we share. And this feels so important, right? Kind of inviting ourselves to wonder and see everything as a part of us that we don't yet know. It reminded me a little bit of Ajahn Chah. He had a practice. Was a Thai forest monk. He had a practice where when he noticed his mind getting really attached to believing his perceptions, his ideas, he would say to himself a Thai phrase that meant, it's uncertain. It's almost like he would practice kind of noticing when he'd get attached to his perceptions, thinking he knew. And he would say to his mind, oh, it's uncertain, it's uncertain. So both of these practices, I think, invite us to wonder, to question what we might assume that we know, and to orient to maybe a different kind of knowing and exploration, not our intellectual mind, our beliefs, but really in our capacity to connect, and through that direct experience to know. And I think we probably all also know the felt sense of the opposite of wonder, right? When we're like, we just don't have any interest, no curiosity, caught in like, I know what that is, or that's boring, and kind of what that feels like. Albert Einstein said, he who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe is as good as dead. His eyes are closed. So it's that important, it's that vital to our aliveness and our learning. And also, wonder is not dependent on happiness or pleasant experience. There have been a bunch of books written about wonder, and they've pointed to this a lot, that we can be experiencing something very difficult, overwhelming, even painful, and we can still sometimes feel a sense of wonder, really learn through that. So in Valerie Kaur's book, You Are a Part of Me I Do Not Yet Know, she is using that a lot in her kind of social justice work, thinking about how she relates to other people and even herself. And Robin Wall Kimmerer in the book Braiding Sweetgrass focuses a lot on bringing wonder into our relationship to nature. And in her indigenous learning as a member of the Potawatomi Nation and being a professor and scientist studying the biology of plants, she writes a lot about what happens when we don't wonder about our natural world. And so she writes about how in her indigenous language, she says, of an inanimate being, like a table, we say, what is it? And we answer, Dopwenyewe, table it is. But of an apple, we must say, who is that being? And reply, Mishimin Yahweh, apple that being is. To speak of those possessed with life and spirit, we must say Yahweh, which is a verb that means to be. She goes on, she says, the animacy of the world is something we already know, but the language of animacy teeters on extinction, not just for Native peoples, but for everyone. Our toddlers speak of plants and animals as if they were people, extending to them self and intention and compassion until we teach them not to. We quickly retrain them and make them forget. When we tell them that the tree is not a who, but an it, we make that maple an object. We put a barrier between us, absolving ourselves of moral responsibility and opening the door to exploitation. Saying it makes a living land into natural resources. If a maple is an it, we can take up the chainsaw. If a maple is a her, we think twice. I think again, right, this is about inviting ourselves into wonder. Who is that being? Feels so similar to, you are a part of me I do not yet know. And that inquiry points us to wisdom, to the truth of interdependence and oneness. And also to the humility of wondering, right? The humility in that. And then I also think about this phrase, you are a part of me I do not yet know, how to direct that toward ourselves, right? To this being, this heart, this body, this mind, and everything that arises in our meditation practice. Our thoughts, our stories, our restlessness, sleepiness, our anger, resistance, pain in the knees or hips. That if we think of any of that as bad practice or something that shouldn't be happening, we're not going to learn from it. We're not going to be curious or want to connect. But if we bring this, oh, this knee pain, you're a part of me I do not yet know, right? Who is that being? We really have a gift to learn and connect. And of course, this is really difficult sometimes. Right? We're not going to always be in a state of wonder. Coming back to that vulnerability and the bravery that this requires. There are times when we're just really not going to want to wonder about anything, especially if we don't feel safe. And Valerie Carr talks about this also, particularly again in the work she does. And she talks about how it's difficult to have that kind of you are a part of me I do not yet know energy toward people who sometimes feel totally in opposition to her or very dangerous to her. And so she offers something around that. She says, when that happens, breathe and rest. Breathe and rest. And when you're ready, see if you can wonder about the world, just a little, enough to show up to the labor one more day. Let wonder surprise you. So I really like this. There's this honoring, meeting ourselves where we are, breathe and rest. And then let wonder surprise you. I know I have felt surprised by wonder many, many times. So many times when, say, with clients or with my partner, I can kind of hear my mind be like, oh, I know what they're feeling, or I know what they mean by that. And if I just kind of invite myself in to say, I actually don't know. Can I just ask? Can I check? I learn so much more. I really learn again and again. I have no idea. I have no idea. And so I want to invite us to play with this, right? To see what brings us into a willingness to wonder. True don't know mind. Everything worthy of being known on its own terms. And kind of the wisdom from that, the knowing that isn't up here, not about our ideas or information, but really the wisdom that's born from wondering almost is like a remembering. And I think everyone here has felt that. It's like you've known it all along. And trusting, we can trust that kind of wisdom because it's here and now. It's immediate, it's embodied. It comes from connecting fully and setting down all those ways we protect ourselves by thinking we know. It's that risk, surrendering to fully wondering and listening and being willing to be changed by that. So I wanted to end with a poem by Bronislaw Maj that I think speaks to the power of wonder and the gift of connection that can come from it. A leaf, one of the last, parts from a maple branch. It is spinning in the transparent air of October, falls on a heap of others, stops, fades. No one admired its entrancing struggle with the wind, followed its flight. No one will distinguish it now as it lies among other leaves. No one saw what I did. I am the only one. So thank you for your attention. And let's practice together. So really take your time. Take your time. I was thinking about how Bill and Susan often say, right? Allow, turn toward this body and settling process as if for the first time. And I can sometimes have a part of me that is like, oh, but I do this every day. I already know. And again, just kind of inviting a little bit of wonder. Like, can we just see a little bit what's needed today, what's happening in the body? Gentle movement, stretches, maybe a few deeper breaths, a sigh on the exhalation. Sometimes swaying a little bit can help bring a sense of connection with our center, a bit of balance. And see what can soften, if anything. Maybe shoulders, belly, thighs, the hands. Just meet ourselves where we are, and inviting very gradual slowing down. And as much as possible, we can invite the heart into this practice, so that our inquiry isn't just coming from the mind, isn't coming from trying to figure out or get somewhere, but more of that constant dance between settling back and opening to receive, to wonder about. Vulnerability of that connection. And again, take your time. You might allow the attention, the focus to rest with the movement of the breath. Allow yourself to wonder about the in-breath, this out-breath. And in moments, maybe expanding that focus to notice and connect with more of what is passing through, arising, moving. check in and notice if the body has become tense or really sleepy. If you're maybe leaning forward into the next moment, see if you can settle back. If there's anything in the body that can soften or release even a little bit. And if you notice the mind getting attached to certain stories or perspectives, thinking that it knows, just maybe gently offering or dropping in, it's uncertain. Or if you're noticing something arising within yourself or imagining a dialogue with another person, who is that being? Who is that being? You're a part of me I do not yet know. Just feel into what it may be like to invite that in as we breathe and notice.